Hello, Kentucky Humane Society photo volunteers. This is Will. I just wanted to take a few minutes and make a video tutorial on just real quick green screen color adjustments. So we're not going to get into anything too deep, too complicated, just how to change the color in just a few steps. Now, one thing that this is dependent on is just fairly even lighting in the photo. So as you can see, over here, it's really like this is not super evenly lit, um, but it's enough for this. Like it doesn't have to be perfect, but it should be close. Like I wouldn't have any more shadows than this, and so I suspect what happened when this was taken, there was probably something, I don't know, blocking the light over here. Like maybe uh, the photo assistant was standing there, kind of casting this a little bit in shadow. I don't honestly recall, um, but yeah. So I've pulled a few example photos just to change the color on, and let's get started. So the first thing you want to do is click Image up here, and again, this is in Photoshop. This is pretty universal among all Photoshop programs, so there may be some slight variation, but this it should pretty well cover what you need, despite, like, if you have an old version of Photoshop. This is the current one at the moment, but that will very very soon change. Photoshop is constantly adjusting and evolving, almost to an annoying pace. So we're gonna go Image, Adjustments, and then down here to Replace Color. You're gonna get this pop-up window here. Now a lot of times this will pop up right there to like 100 just by default. I just have mine over here. But anyway, so what you're doing is you're just going to select just what you think is an area of green color that best represents the hue in that whole image. Because as you can see, like, even though uh, the screen itself, like in person, like in reality, is all the same hue, because of these lighting differences, just shadows from the dog, shadows from a volunteer, just and honestly, our lighting setup isn't perfect for this sort of thing, but I think we've been able to make it work pretty well. Uh, but yeah, so just select whatever you think is like best representative of the shade of green that's in that photo. So for me, I would say it's about here, because it's like for this image, because like we have this shadow here, this shadow down here, so this part's a little bit of an outlier. But yeah, so I think selecting about that is probably what you want. And then I'm going to go over here to the fuzziness, and I'm just going to drag that slider all the way up because I want it to read any shade of green as something that I want to adjust. Because like if I went down here, as you can see in this preview image, it's only selecting these little specks of that specific hue. Even more so down here, like if I slide it all the way. But I don't want that. I want it to recognize this green is the same as this green, is the same as this green, is the same as this green. So, and then honestly, also, like, there are some green reflections on the dog, and I want it to change those too. So sliding all the way up so it's reading any types of green as something to change, I think most of the time is the right way of doing it for our setup. And just with the amount of dogs that we have going through, I think that's fine. So then all you're going to do, drag this hue slider around to whatever color that you think looks nice. You can just drag it back and forth and just kind of see what you think. So, maybe you want red, or, maybe you just want a different shade of green, something a little more yellow, something a little more blue, whatever. I'm always quite fond of a blue. It's my favorite color, so I'm a little biased, but there's just something nice about a nice blue color. But I definitely like some variation, and so I've been doing a lot with colors in all these ranges. But for this dog, yeah, I think a nice blue. I think it kind of I think it might bring out the eyes a little bit, so we'll do that. If you want, you can mess around with the saturation a little bit. So what you can do, like if you wanted it to be on a gray background, which is, it's nice and kind of trendy, you can just drag that all the way down and then I have a gray background and then click OK and you're done, for the most part. So that's something you could do. But, I like bright poppy colors. So, this is it at 0. I might just bump that up just a little. Just, like 10 points or so. Just so you really get that brightness. Maybe I'll go down a little bit too. You don't want to like overpower the dog with the bright background either. So that's it. So click OK, and there it is. And so, this is all pretty evenly selected. I mean, I think this did a fine job. I would have no problem just putting that on the site and then file and save it wherever you want it to save it. But yeah, I think that looks great. So we'll go over here to this photo of Ziggy here, and we're going to do the same thing. So we'll do File, Place Color, click it. Now this is pretty evenly lit, this particular photo. Fuzziness is dragged all the way up, and then I can just slide it around. And as you can see, this little like color spill here, where it's just reflected green. He was just probably pretty low to the ground. I mean, he was a short little dog, so it just got some of those lights caught up in his fur, just reflected up, which isn't ideal, but I think it's fine. And I think if you change the background, you want to make sure that gets changed as well, just so it's a more immersive photo. But like this is doing a pretty good job of just automatically doing it. So I don't know. Maybe we'll have some yellow here for this dog. So yeah, I think that looks fine, right like that. Yeah. Now, if you're zooming in real close and you're kind of pixel peeping, as people call it, you'll notice there's a thin little kind of line around here, just from that color shift. I mean, it's going to be displayed about this size on the site. So I don't think that's that important. Honestly, I would have no problem just putting this up on the site as is. I think that looks fine. And then here we've got this little guy, and gosh, I cannot remember this one's name either. I feel bad about that. But yeah, and as you can see, we've got kind of a pretty radical color shift from here to here. This was a pretty steep shadow, which I guess I overlooked when I was shooting, or I don't know. It's really, it doesn't matter that much. The dog is lit fine, so. But yeah, so I'm gonna pick just kind of a hue right in the middle there between the two, and we'll just see how that does. Yeah, I mean, I think that it's doing fine. So maybe I'll be a nice kind of pink. I think that looks pretty good. Yeah, maybe bump up that saturation a little. Well, maybe not. Slightly. Yeah, I wouldn't mess with the lightness too much. I just never. With doing this kind of thing, I mean, you could do that. You could slide down lightness if you want. If the dog's very well lit and the background is like lit in a very isolated way, you may be able to like drag it down if you wanted a black background, possibly a white background, although not with this particular photo, without doing some serious adjustments to the dog in the foreground. So generally, I like to just keep that at 0 because that's just I don't think it's necessarily important for this kind of like just quick adjustment. Yeah, that should be fine. So yeah, that's all there is to that, and thank you for tuning in. And I'll be releasing more of these videos with different like different techniques and things on color adjustment and different Photoshop techniques, and I'll probably make one for GIMP as well, because those without Photoshop, I highly encourage that you get GIMP, GIMP. It's an unfortunate name for the software, but it's a freeware program for very versatile image editing. So I highly recommend it if you don't want to get Photoshop. Yeah. Anyway, thank you so much, and thanks for tuning in.